My name is Asa Wyndham, and today I am here to tell the story that changed my life irreversibly, a story that tore me from the certainties of the physical world and took me beyond the limits of reason. I was born and raised in Savannah, Georgia, surrounded by cobblestone streets and ancient oak trees draped in Spanish moss. Ever since I was a boy, I have been drawn to the big questions of life, the ones that quietly niggle. Where did we come from? Where are we going? And what is the purpose of it all? Perhaps it was this quiet impulse that led me to pursue a career as a philosophy professor. I lived a simple but deeply meaningful life. I taught at the local university, where I spent my days debating ideas with young minds hungry for understanding. I was married to Eleanor, my soulmate, whose gentleness and steadfastness were my foundation. Our free time was filled with long walks in the city's leafy parks, afternoons reading in the shade of the trees, and conversations that seemed to go on forever. I was never exactly a religious man. My faith was in reason, logic, books, and well-founded ideas. For me, everything in life, even emotions, could somehow be understood or at least questioned rationally. Then came 1977. I was 40 years old and my life seemed to be flowing smoothly, but the calm did not last. The news came like a sharp blow: colon cancer, terminal stage. Nothing, absolutely nothing, could prepare me for the impact of those words. From one moment to the next, everything I had studied for decades, life, death, finitude, the essence of being, ceased to be an abstraction. It became flesh. It became my reality. The philosophical discussions in the classroom, which had once seemed so profound, now sounded distant, almost empty, compared to the real weight of my own mortality. The months that followed my diagnosis were a real whirlwind. I went through treatment sessions that seemed to drain the little energy I had left. I watched my body grow thin and waste away in front of the mirror. The constant and relentless pain became my companion. And yet, Eleanor was there, always, firm, loving, tireless. She held my hand during the long nights, whispered words of comfort even when she could barely hide her own despair. Her love was the anchor that kept me from sinking completely. But despite all the support and care, I could feel life slipping through my fingers, like sand slowly slipping away. What I didn't know at the time was that this experience, which seemed like the end of everything, would actually be the beginning of something completely new. A journey that would break the boundaries of reason, science, and logic that I so revered. Today, as I sit before you, I speak not as a spiritual teacher, nor as someone who has written books or sought fame with his story. I speak as an ordinary man, a man who has experienced something extraordinary, something that has changed the way I see the world and my very existence. I know that what I am about to share may seem unbelievable. It may even sound impossible to those who have never experienced anything like it, but I promise you, every word I say is true. At least, it is true for me. It is how I lived it. It is how I remember it. This is the story of my death and, paradoxically, of my rebirth. It all began on December 26, 1977. It was a cold, grey morning in Savannah. The sky seemed covered by a thick blanket of clouds, and the wind carried with it the damp smell of bare winter trees. I had been hospitalized for weeks, completely debilitated. The cancer had already taken over most of my body. Morphine ran constantly through my veins, trying in vain to numb the pain. Eleanor, as always, was by my side. Sitting in the chair next to the bed, she held my hand tenderly, even when I could barely react. I remember looking out the window. The dry branches of the trees were silhouetted against the overcast sky, and in that moment, a strange melancholy came over me. I thought, maybe this is the last image I'll ever see in this world. A cold thought, but not exactly frightening, just final. Then something happened. The pain, the searing pain that had been with me day and night, vanished, like a switch flipped. Suddenly, the room around me seemed more vivid. The colors became intense, as if someone had adjusted the contrast of reality. The white walls of the hospital glowed with a light that seemed to come from within them. The sound of the heart monitor, the soft murmur of Eleanor's breathing, everything became incredibly clear, almost musical. And then I felt, there is no other word for it, lightness. My body seemed to float, as if gravity no longer had any power over me. I looked down at my hands and almost gasped. I could see through them. They were becoming translucent, like mist dissipating. My first impulse was panic, but that initial fear was quickly swallowed up by an indescribable peace. There was no pain. There was no fear. just a kind of calm curiosity. I knew in some deep, undeniable way that I was dying, but it didn't scare me. At that moment, I was about to cross a threshold and begin a journey that would change everything. Suddenly, I felt as if something invisible was pulling me upward with surprising gentleness, as if hands made of wind were guiding me carefully. I looked down, and what I saw took my breath away. My own body, pale and still, lying in that hospital bed. Eleanor was still there beside me, holding my hand. Her tears flowed silently, as if each drop carried the weight of 1,000 goodbyes. I wanted to scream to her that everything was okay, that I felt no pain, that there was nothing left to fear. But my words wouldn't come out. I no longer had a mouth, I was just presence. I continued to ascend, passing through the hospital ceiling as if it were made of smoke or mist. I saw the fluorescent lights glowing, and then the building structures disappearing below me. Savannah, with its ancient rooftops and trees that I knew so well, shrank before my eyes until it seemed like a miniature, a distant map of a life that was no longer mine. And then, without any transition or warning, I was enveloped in complete darkness. But it wasn't the kind of darkness that frightened me. It was an absence of light that felt more like an embrace, warm, silent, comforting, as if I were being held in a veil of black velvet, floating in a space where time didn't exist. There were no clocks, no body, no need to breathe. I was just consciousness, pure existence, a spark floating in a nothingness that, strangely, felt full of possibility, of presence, of something indescribably greater than myself. It was in this state of absolute peace that I perceived the light. At first, it was just a distant dot, a lonely spark, like a shy star against the endless sky. But as I watched it, it grew. It expanded toward me with a quiet grace. The light didn't hurt. It wasn't like looking directly at the sun. It was soft, welcoming, almost alive, as if it had a heart that beat in tune with something I didn't yet understand. I was attracted to her, not with her body, but with everything I was at that moment. A deep desire to merge with that light, to be part of it, and the closer I got, the more the feeling of peace intensified. It was like returning to a home I never knew existed, but that was always there waiting for me. And then, without barriers, without effort, I stepped into the light. It enveloped me completely. It passed through me, dissolving every trace of what I had once called me. There was no more separation. That invisible boundary between what I was and what the light was, gone. I was the light, and the light was me. I have tried to find words to describe this union, this silent ecstasy, but it is impossible. It is like trying to explain a symphony to someone who has never heard a sound. This was love in its purest form, a love that does not demand, that does not judge, that simply, and a love that penetrates every fragment of the soul and at the same time undoes every notion of individuality. And it was in that state of fusion, of oneness with all that exists, that my true journey began. Gradually, I felt another presence. At first, it was just a subtle sensation, as if someone were watching me tenderly. There were no eyes, no words, just an awareness, gentle and loving. But over time, this presence became clearer, closer, and then Ithawi, a being of pure light, radiant, but not blinding. His form was vaguely human, yet constantly changing, as if his body were made of liquid light, ever in motion. He didn't have a face in the traditional sense, but I could feel his expression. Love, compassion, and a wisdom so ancient that it seemed to contain all time within him. He communicated with me, but not with words. It was as if he transmitted directly into my being not only ideas, but also emotions, memories, meanings. Each sentence was an explosion of meaning, and the first message was clear: welcome, don't be afraid, you are safe here. I wanted to answer, to ask 1,000 questions that were bubbling inside me. I wanted to understand what was happening, what that place was, who he was. But before I could formulate a single question, he anticipated me. Everything will be answered in due time, but right now there is something you need to see. And as soon as he said that, the scenery around us began to change. The light that surrounded us transformed, like a gigantic screen made of energy and memory. And before me, my life began to pass. Like a film in accelerated speed, but at the same time, each scene carried such an intense emotional weight that it seemed to last an eternity. I saw my childhood in Savannah. I saw the scorching summers, running barefoot in the backyard, playing ball with my brothers, laughing until I couldn't stand it anymore. I saw my mother calling me for dinner, the smell of fried chicken wafting from the kitchen, and the sound of crickets as night fell. Then came the school years, the nervousness of exams, the friends I made, the times I failed, and the small victories that made my heart swell with pride. I saw, with heartbreaking clarity, the day I met Eleanor. She was wearing a blue dress with a shy but charming smile. Our first kiss under an ancient oak tree, our wedding with a light rain falling, and our fingers intertwined as if we already knew we were meant to be together. And I saw my life as a teacher. The classes, the students, the heated debates. I saw the eyes of those young people light up when they understood a new concept. I felt again the pleasure of teaching, of sharing ideas, of provoking questions. But it wasn't just an observation. It revived everything, with more intensity than the first time. And as the scenes played out, I began to understand something I had never realized in life, that every act of kindness, every word spoken with love, every choice, even the smallest ones, had a profound impact, like ripples that spread out into infinity. The review of my life was not a judgment. There was no accusation, there was no condemnation. There was only understanding, loving and immense understanding. And that, perhaps, was the most surprising thing of all. The countless classes I had taught, the students whose lives I had touched, it all passed before me like a great moving mosaic. But it wasn't just a recap of events. It was something much deeper, visceral. I wasn't just seeing my life, I was in it feeling, in all its complexity. Every gesture, every word, every choice, everything carried a weight I had never realized. A simple act of kindness, done almost without thinking, had unfolded into silent ripples that impacted the lives of people I had never met. I saw one time when I offered a word of encouragement to a discouraged student, and how that moment planted a seed that grew, transforming not only his path but also the paths of others around him. But I also saw the other side. I saw the moments when I was impatient, when my pride spoke louder, or when I chose silence where there was room for compassion. And there was no need for anyone to judge me. I felt what others felt, the hurt, the discomfort, the abandonment, as if her emotions had merged with mine, making it clear that, in the end, everything is connected. This review of my life was not a punishment. It was an invitation to awareness. The being of light stood by me the entire time, radiating a presence that was pure acceptance. There was no condemnation. There was love, immense, unconditional, and completely transformative. As the last image faded, I fell silent. It was as if it took me forever just to digest everything I had seen and felt. And then, for the first time, I was able to speak. I didn't know. I had no idea the impact my actions had on others. The being of light responded, not with words in the air, but with a stream of understanding that passed through me like a warm wave. Few realize the true scope of their actions while in physical form. This is one of the most important lessons you can take with you. I felt an indescribable tenderness in that response, like a compassionate teacher who understands the student's mistake, but knows that the learning is just beginning. "What now?" I asked, feeling vulnerable but at the same time ready for more. The being responded with a kindness that seemed to envelop my entire being. "Now there is more for you to see and learn. Your journey is just beginning." And so once again I felt that gentle movement, as if I were being lifted, guided, transported to a new level of experience. The landscape changed, as if my consciousness had passed through an invisible portal and entered a new reality. We began to pass through different realms. There was no time, there was no direction. It was as if each place was actually a state of consciousness, a distinct vibration in the great spectrum of existence. The first realm we visited was one of beauty beyond human words. Imagine the most vivid colors you have ever seen. Now imagine them having sound, movement, purpose. Each color vibrated with a life of its own. The air, if I can call it that, seemed to be made of liquid light, pulsating in harmony with everything around it. Ethereal shapes danced gently, creating geometric patterns and sounds, as if the space itself were alive and aware. There I met other souls. Some felt familiar, not with faces or names, but with a sense of reunion, like old friends you recognize by their hearts, not their looks. We communicated without words, only with feelings and intentions that flowed between us like music. The joy was palpable, not a euphoric joy, but deep, steady, comforting. Love was in everything. It was the fabric of the place. The being of light explained to me that this was a kingdom of healing and renewal, a space for souls to rest between one physical life and another, a sacred interval where energetic wounds are healed, where balance is found before the next step. The compassion that permeated everything there was so intense that it made me cry, not out of sadness but out of relief. Then we were taken to a completely different place. The mood changed, the vibe was denser, more sober. A grey haze enveloped everything, and the colors were duller. I saw souls wandering, looking confused, some in subtle pain, others visibly distressed. There was no screaming, no despair, just a heavy silence, full of unresolved feelings. The being of light explained to me, this is a realm of transition. Souls who have difficulty accepting their passage, or who are tied to intense bonds with earthly life, remain here temporarily. I felt a tightness in my chest. I wanted to help. Some souls seemed to repeat thoughts like echoes, regrets, hurts, guilt. But the being reassured me, even here they are not alone. This is a learning stage. Nothing is eternal, not even suffering. I watched other beings of light, similar to my guide, approach these souls with infinite patience and tenderness, offering comfort, guidance, and most of all, presence. The memory of this has left a deep impression on me. Even in the darkest places there was love. There always was. And then we were taken to another realm. This, in turn, was the opposite of passivity. It was full of movement, purpose, creation. It seemed like a planning center, or perhaps a spiritual laboratory. Souls gathered in groups, planning experiments, discussing paths, exchanging insights. There was a sense of mission, of responsibility, but also of joy in participating in the great tapestry of existence. There I understood something fundamental. Souls choose many of their experiences before they incarnate. Nothing is forced upon them. There is always a purpose, even in the most difficult lives. Human experiences are like intense classes in a sacred school, and the goal is not perfection, it is growth. In that place, I saw possibilities, paths not taken, lessons I had learned, and others I still needed to live. I understood that my journey was not over yet, and with this revelation, a question began to arise within me. Should I go back? But that's another part of the story. There, in that realm where everything vibrated with purpose, I saw countless souls engaged in something I can only describe as cosmic work. There was no rush, nor tension. What was perceived was an intense, silent, and harmonious movement, as if each being knew exactly what to do, guided by a deeper wisdom. Some souls seemed to be in meetings, planning future incarnations, evaluating past experiences with the precision of a spiritual craftsman. Others were engaged in something even more mysterious, participating in the creation. Although I couldn't fully comprehend what they were creating, there was an energy of birth and innovation in the air. Everything there carried a sense of purpose, not an individual, selfish purpose, but something that transcended the self, a collective, universal purpose. My guide, with the calm of someone who knows the secrets of time, explained, "This is a realm of divine collaboration. Here souls contribute to the evolution not only of themselves, but of all existence. Each soul has a role in the grand plan of the universe. It is here that they discover and begin to fulfill it." Those words resonated deeply within me. For the first time, I understood that life is not an isolated event, but part of something infinitely greater. We continued our journey, visiting realms that defy any earthly description. I saw places of pure learning, where knowledge seemed to pour out like rivers of light. It was an ancient knowledge, vast, and at the same time intimate, as if it had always been there, just waiting for us to be mature enough to absorb it. I also saw realms of creation, where ideas, possibilities, and even alternative futures were shaped by consciousnesses that acted as cosmic artists, shaping the invisible. In each kingdom, the lesson was the same. Nothing is separate. Everything, absolutely everything, is intertwined. There were no real boundaries between the places we visited, nor between the souls that inhabited them. It was as if we were all woven into the same cosmic tapestry, in which each thread was essential for the whole to make sense. During this journey, I was transformed. My consciousness expanded in ways I had never imagined. I began to see my life, and all life on Earth, from a new perspective. I understood that every experience we have, every hardship, every encounter, and every loss has a greater purpose, often invisible to our limited perception. Yet even with this expansion, I felt like I was just beginning to understand, as if everything I had experienced up until then was an introduction. And then my guide, with that look that is silence and wisdom at the same time, turned to me and said, "There is one last encounter, one that will profoundly change your understanding of the purpose of your life and the future that awaits humanity." As soon as he finished his sentence, I felt the change in the air. The energy around me began to pulse with an intensity I had never experienced before. It wasn't uncomfortable, but it vibrated with a power that made me stand still in awe. Space itself seemed to bend, as if we were approaching the heart of the universe. The atmosphere was charged with an indescribable magnetism, as if every particle in the air knew that something sacred was about to happen. And then we were enveloped in a light so bright, so complete, that for a moment I thought I would be dissolved. But I was not destroyed, I was activated. Every particle of my being seemed to be awakened, aligned, renewed, not with pain, but with a feeling of power, as if I was finally remembering who I really was. And then, before me, he appeared, a presence of such majesty and power that my immediate instinct was to bow in absolute respect, not out of fear, but out of reverence. He didn't need to introduce himself. My entire being knew who was before me. It was Archangel Michael. His form was both defined and fluid, like a statue made of living light. His armor gleamed with a gold so pure it seemed to contain the brilliance of 1,000 suns. Every fragment of that armor reflected lights that did not belong to this world, blues we had never seen, silvers that vibrated like liquid crystal, golds that pulsed with wisdom. Her wings, oh, her wings! They were vast, immense, majestic. Each feather seemed to contain a universe within itself, with galaxies swirling gently in spirals of light. They were not just beautiful, they were alive, conscious, sacred. His face was silently, indescribably beautiful. Strength and compassion were combined in every feature, in a harmony that defied any human notion of appearance, but it was his eyes that held me captivated, eyes as deep as the cosmos itself, that seemed to contain the entire history of the universe and yet see into the most intimate part of who I was. And then he spoke, not with voice, but with vibration, with a sound that did not pass through the air, but through the soul. When he pronounced my name, Honor, I felt as if the whole universe had stopped for a moment. It was the sound of my name reel, one that resonates with the essence of my soul, far beyond what anyone has ever called me. You have been brought here because there is an important role you must play in what is to come. The words touched something inside me that I didn't even know existed. An old memory, perhaps, a truth that was dormant, waiting for this moment to be awakened. I wanted to speak. I wanted to ask, but I found myself in silence, enveloped by an emotion so great that the words simply wouldn't come. I was before something sacred, before a calling, and that was just the first spark of the mission that awaited me. What I had experienced up until then, Miguel explained, was just the beginning, a preparation. The universe, he said, was at a tipping point, and humanity was on the brink of a monumental choice. He reached out his hand, and the space around us rippled as if it were made of water and light. The images that appeared before me cut me like invisible knives. I saw scenes that seemed to have come out of a nightmare, brutal wars, cities in ruins, entire nations consumed by conflicts that no longer made sense. I saw the planet being torn apart by natural disasters of epic proportions, oceans swallowing land, forests burning endlessly, earthquakes ripping apart continents. There were pandemics, famines, social collapses. I saw the disintegration of human empathy, distrust becoming the norm, compassion dying, suffocated by indifference, and most painfully, I saw lost souls, wandering in confusion, as if their own inner light had been extinguished. Miguel turned to me. His eyes, windows to a wisdom that transcends time and space, looked at me with tenderness and seriousness. "This is just one of the possible futures," he said. "It is the path of darkness, built by the choices of fear, greed, and ignorance, but it is not inevitable." I felt the weight of that vision crush me inside. How could we, such fragile and divided humans, avoid such a terrible end? Doubt shot through me like an arrow, but before I could formulate the question, Miguel raised his hand again, and the scenario changed. Now, before me, a completely different world appeared. The earth was still there, but it had changed. I saw people, of all cultures, all ages, walking together, their eyes shining with understanding. I saw communities united, working the land, caring for the oceans, respecting one another as brothers. I saw technology no longer at the service of destruction, but as an extension of wisdom, cleaning rivers, curing diseases, connecting consciousnesses. And most of all, I saw open hearts, a humanity awakened, guided by love, clarity, and responsibility. "This is the future we fight for," Miguel said, "and this is where you come in." A lump formed in my throat. I, a simple philosophy professor from Savannah, was part of something so immense. The idea seemed almost laughable. I could barely change my own habits, let alone the fate of the world. But Miguel read my thoughts before I even verbalized them. He smiled, a smile that seemed to carry the tenderness of 1,000 mothers and the steadfastness of 1,000 warriors. "Never underestimate the power of a single soul dedicated to the light," he said. "Every act of love, every word of truth, every gesture of compassion is like a stone thrown into a still lake. Its ripples spread far beyond what you can see." And then he came closer. The energy around him intensified, enveloping me like a warm, welcoming yet powerful blanket, as if I were being anointed with a force that was not my own, but that recognized and accepted me. "Your mission, Issa," he said, "is to return." I remained silent, feeling those words settle inside me. "To go back," I repeated, almost in a whisper. "Yes, return to the physical world. Take with you what you saw, what you felt, what you learned. Share it with anyone who is ready to listen. You will be a beacon. In the midst of darkness, your light will awaken others. In the midst of fear, your voice will remind them that there is another way." I felt my legs tremble, or whatever was left of my legs in that state. How could I? How could I face a collapsing world, armed only with words and intentions? But Miguel smiled again, and in that smile, I saw something that filled me with courage, faith. He believed in me. "You will not be alone," he said. "We, the beings of light, will be with you, always." That always resonated within me with the strength of an eternal promise. I knew then that there was no way I could say no. Not after everything I had witnessed, not after feeling what I had felt. I took a deep breath, or at least simulated a gesture that on earth would mean that, and said, "I'm ready." The certainty I heard in my own voice surprised me. I was ready, yes, ready to go back. Ready to be a small candle lit in a long night, knowing that if others were lit, together we would form the day. Miguel nodded. At that gesture, I felt a wave of energy pass through me, not as a shock, but as a memory. It was as if something I had always known but had forgotten had been reactivated. I was remembering who I was and why I had come to Earth in the first place. But before I left, Miguel stopped me with one last look. "There is something you still need to hear." Time, if it existed there, seemed to stop. Everything around us was suspended, as if the universe was holding its breath. "This message," he said, "it's not just for you, it's for the whole world. Carry it humbly, but firmly." Then he spoke, and each word was engraved in my soul like fire and honey. The message was not just heard, it was felt, lived, understood with my whole being. It was a call, a warning, and a promise. The Earth appeared before us again, now seen from space, a blue and green orb, floating with fragile beauty in the immensity of the cosmos. It was the most alive thing I had ever seen, but as he watched, shadows began to form, darkness that slowly spread, covering parts of the planet like a thick fog. Every choice made on Earth, every thought and emotion feeds these shadows until dissolves them. Miguel reached out his hand, and for an instant I saw each human being as a spark of light. Some shone brightly, others flickered weakly, almost extinguished, but all of them, without exception, contained light. The mission was simple, but immense. Wake up, choose the light, and remember that every soul matters. Miguel's gaze fixed on mine with loving seriousness, and his voice echoed once more, this time loaded with an inescapable truth. "What do you see now, Esser?" he said, "are the bitter fruits of the choices that humanity has made over millennia." With a subtle gesture, as if drawing on the very fabric of the cosmos, the view around us was transformed. I saw the Earth in turmoil. Scenes flashed before me with terrifying clarity. Battlefields in flames, men, women, and children fleeing their homes, pursued by wars fueled by fear and intolerance. Religious, political, racial conflicts, all fueled by ignorance and the inability to see the other as part of oneself. I saw natural disasters of colossal proportions. Oceans surging against coastlines, swallowing entire cities, wild winds ripping up forests like paper. the Earth's soil shaking, opening into deep crevasses that swallowed civilizations. It was as if the planet itself was screaming in pain. Miguel raised his hand again, and the scene changed. Now I could see people, not their bodies, but their auras, their inner lights. Most were shrouded in thick shadows like dark mists that obscured their light. Some seemed almost blacked out, drowning in fear, anger, sadness. And I saw, with devastating clarity, how this darkness spread, not like a physical virus, but like an infection of the soul, a shadow that passed from heart to heart. "All this," said Miguel with regret in his voice, "are symptoms. The real danger lies not in external catastrophes, but in inner disconnection. Humanity is in danger of losing its connection with the divine, and a soul disconnected from the source is lost in endless cycles of suffering and illusion." I was overcome by profound anguish. How could I stop such a comprehensive collapse? How could I reverse a process that seemed to have been underway for so long? The feeling of helplessness grew within me, suffocating. But before I could sink into despair, Miguel spoke again. His voice now carried not sadness, but hope and strength. "None of this is written in stone, Isa. The bleak future you have seen is just one of many possible paths. It is a warning, not a sentence. Humanity still has a choice. There is still time, and most of all, there is still hope." With another gesture, the visions changed. Now amid the pulsating darkness, points of light began to shine, small at first, but vibrant. And as I watched them, more and more points appeared, illuminating the darkness like stars in the night sky. These were people, ordinary people, mothers, fathers, young people, old people, living with love, speaking with compassion, reaching out to one another, even in the midst of chaos. I saw smiles appear where there had been pain. I saw forgiveness offered in situations that would have otherwise ended in revenge. I saw light spread from soul to soul. "These are the awakened souls," explained Miguel, "those who have chosen, even without understanding everything, to live by love. Every gesture of kindness, every sincere word, every act of compassion, no matter how small, sends waves of light not only through the physical world, but throughout all the spiritual realms. The light expands and awakens others." It was then that he turned to me with a presence that seemed to expand the very space around us. "And you, Isa, are being called to join them." Those words fell upon me with the weight of a revelation and the lightness of a reunion. "You must become a beacon in times of darkness. Everything you have seen here, every truth felt, every insight experienced, must be taken back with you, shared, not as doctrine, not as dogma, but as a seed planted in the hearts of those who are ready to listen." I felt a shiver run through me, not of fear but of responsibility. "But how, Miguel?" I asked in a whisper. "How can I convince anyone of all this? Who will believe me?" He smiled, and in that smile there was eternity. "You don't need to convince anyone. Your mission is not to prove, it's to live. Be the truth you have known. Love unconditionally. Have compassion, even in the face of injustice. And when the time is right, speak up, tell your story, and let each soul awaken for itself in its own time." There was a pause. Miguel's eyes became even more intense. "And never forget, you will not be alone. We, the beings of light, will be by your side, always, guiding, protecting, breathing courage into your heart when doubt wants to dominate you." A wave of light enveloped my being. I felt as if every fragment of my consciousness was being filled with a new energy, warm, powerful, alive. It was as if I was being sealed with a mission, prepared for something much bigger than myself. Miguel approached once more. "The future of Earth is at a turning point, Esa. The choices each soul makes now will determine not only the fate of the planet, but of countless other interconnected realities. What is at stake goes beyond what your human eyes can see. But the truth is simple. Love is the key. Light is the way. And you now carry both within you." With these words, I felt myself being called back. There was a force gently pulling me, like a tide guiding me to another shore. I began to feel the weight of matter again, the call of the physical body, but something in me had changed forever. I was ready to return, not as the same man who had left, but as someone truly reborn, on a mission. And it was then that everything around me began to slowly dissolve. The light, Michael, the realms beyond. I was coming back. Miguel's last words still echoed in my mind, as if they had been burned into my consciousness. It was a mixture of urgency and destiny, as if each syllable carried the weight of an undeniable truth. The return to my body was not immediate, nor was it smooth. It was a strange crossing, almost impossible to describe in human words. I was being pulled backwards, as if I had been pulled from a calm, luminous sea only to fall suddenly into murky, shallow waters. It was like passing through veils of reality, one by one, each layer denser, more limited, more mundane. There in that space beyond time I was light. It was pure expansion. The peace I felt in the spiritual realms was so deep, so complete, that the mere thought of returning to the prison of flesh and blood felt like a form of punishment. I hesitated. I wanted to stay. But then something inside me, perhaps the memory of the mission I had been entrusted with, or the echo of Miguel's words, rekindled a spark of purpose. And it was this spark that kept me going, even when each step towards the physical plane seemed to take me away from the light. As I got closer to Earth, I began to feel things I had completely forgotten. The weight, gravity, the strange feeling of being stuck in a single point in space, unable to move freely like before. It was like trying to get back into a body that no longer fit me, like putting on tight clothes after years of freedom. The discomfort was brutal. First, there was a vague awareness that my body existed. Then came the pains, the ones that had become part of my routine before everything happened. Cancer. The pain was back, but it was different. It was still there, yes, but it felt smaller, as if it had lost its power to consume me. It was then that I began to hear voices. At first they were distant, muffled, as if they were coming through a long tunnel, but little by little they began to take shape. I heard Eleanor, my wife. Her voice, choked with emotion, said my name between whispers of love and silent pleas. Then came the steady, controlled sound of Dr. Becker, giving quick instructions, trying to maintain control of the situation. Each word pulled me a little closer to the here and now. With an almost superhuman effort, I gathered what little energy I had and opened my eyes. The light of the hospital struck me like a bolt of lightning, cold, harsh, uncomfortable after the serene luminosity of the spiritual planes. I blinked several times, trying to adjust my eyes, and then I saw her, Eleanor. His face was the first one I could see clearly. He was covered in tears, his eyes red from crying, but when he realized I was awake, his face lit up with a joy so pure it reminded me of the light I had just left behind. "Asher," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Oh, Asher, you've come back to me." I tried to respond, but my throat felt like sand. The only sound that came out was a weak moan. Eleanor immediately grabbed a glass of water and held a straw to my lips. The cold liquid sliding down my throat was a shock, a vivid reminder that I was back in the physical world, with all that entailed. Dr. Becker approached the bed, his eyes wide with astonishment. He stared at the monitors as if they were lying. "Mr. Wyndham, this is extraordinary. We have declared you clinically dead." He shook his head in disbelief. "Well, that doesn't matter now. Are you feeling—" I swallowed, still with difficulty, and muttered, "I am here." 2 simple words, but within them was a whole universe of meaning. I was back, but I was not the same man. Something deep inside me had changed. I had died, of that there was no doubt, and returned not only to life, but to a new existence, with a new vision, with a new calling. In the days that followed, I underwent an endless series of examinations and tests. The doctors were, to say the least, perplexed. The cancer, which had previously taken over my body like a growing shadow, was now contained. It had not disappeared completely, but it had regressed in ways that none of them could explain. In a moment of unusual honesty, Dr. Becker looked me in the eye and said, "It's a miracle. I have no other word for it." But I knew it was more than a miracle. It was purpose. It was mission. Something had been planted in me on that other side, something I needed to bring to the surface here. As my body slowly recovered, my mind began to work. How to translate what I had experienced? How can we explain in human words something so vast, so far beyond the limits of earthly understanding? How do you get Miguel's message across without sounding like someone who's lost his mind? And every time those doubts plagued me, I looked at Eleanor. I looked at her eyes, at the love that shone in her smile, and I remembered. Love. That was why I had come back. To be a channel of that love. To help others awaken to a greater truth. The truth of who they really are. As the days passed, as my physical strength returned, I felt a new energy flowing within me. It wasn't just the joy of being alive. It was more than that. It was a sense of connection, of mission, of belonging to something much bigger than myself. I had been touched by eternity, and now my life had a new purpose. I knew deep in my newly returned soul that the path ahead would not be easy. There would be stumbles, nights of doubt, moments of painful silence where I would question everything, but I also knew that I would not be alone. The memory of that unconditional love that had enveloped me on the other side, more real than any pain, stronger than any fear, was like an inner beacon, a constant presence guiding me through the darkness. That love gave me the courage to face the unknown with an open heart. When the day came to leave the hospital, I felt a tightness in my chest, a mixture of apprehension and a faint spark of hope. The world outside awaited me, a world that seemed somehow new, even though I knew it was I who had changed. With Eleanor, my tireless companion, by my side, I took my first steps into the sunlight. The warmth of the sun on my face, the smell of the fresh air, the sounds of the city, everything seemed more vivid, more meaningful. The trees, the clouds, even the footsteps of people on the sidewalks. There was life pulsing through everything. The future that Miguel had shown me was not easy to forget. It was a dense, challenging scenario, full of trials, but it was also a fertile field, full of possibilities for awakening and transformation. And I had a role to play. I had been called to be light in the midst of shadows, and even without fully understanding what that meant in practice, I felt that I had already begun. In the months following my near-death experience, I immersed myself in an intense process of reflection, adaptation, and self-discovery. Returning to normal life after having touched the eternal was, to say the least, disconcerting. Everything around me seemed both familiar and strange. The colors of things seemed deeper, as if they were hiding previously invisible truths. The sounds of the world, a child's laughter, the wind in the trees, even the roar of traffic, had a density I had never realized. Even the air, there was something in it, a vibration, a subtle energy that I could now feel. It was as if I had come back with a new set of eyes, eyes that saw beyond the surface. But this new sensitivity brought its own challenges. How could I continue to live a normal routine, paying bills, going to the supermarket, grading tests, knowing what I now know? How could I reconcile eternity with the small details of everyday life? It was Eleanor, with her constant, down-to-earth love, who kept me grounded. She was my silent support, my balance point between the two worlds. Even though she didn't fully understand what I had been through, she listened. She held my hand when the physical pain returned. She hugged me when the weight of the mission seemed too much. Her love was a direct echo of that divine love I had experienced on the other side, palpable, unconditional, healing. Little by little, I began to share my experience. First with close friends, trusted colleagues. I knew I couldn't just go around telling the whole story right away. The world isn't ready for certain truths. But I felt I had to plant seeds. Each conversation was a test. Some reacted with skepticism, frowning in respectful silence. Others listened with fascination, their eyes shining with curiosity. Some were startled, as if I had touched on something they preferred to keep buried. But there were also those who felt touched, even relieved, as if my words had confirmed something they already knew but couldn't quite put their finger on. One of the first people I spoke to more openly was Dr. Becker. He had been my doctor throughout my treatment. When I finished telling him everything I had experienced, he was silent for a while. Then he looked at me with an expression of someone trying to balance science with something bigger. "Mr. Wyndham, from a medical point of view, your recovery is impossible. What happened to your body has no scientific explanation. As for what you experienced, I am a man of science. I can neither affirm nor deny. But one thing is certain, something profound happened to you, and the effects are visible." Those words stayed with me. They summed up the challenge I would face in trying to share my story. The rational, objective world we live in is not equipped to deal with spiritual realities, but I could not turn back. Something in me had changed forever, and even if my words were met with doubt, my presence, my transformation, was proof enough for anyone who cared to see. Over time, I became more confident. I returned to my job as a philosophy teacher, but my classes were no longer the same. I couldn't talk directly about my experience in class. The academic boundaries were still too rigid for that, but I began to lead my students down deeper paths. Instead of just discussing concepts, I led them to question the meaning of existence, the nature of consciousness, the origin of love, and what it really means to be alive. Outside of university, I began giving talks to smaller groups, more intimate gatherings, where I felt free to talk about what really mattered. I spoke about the experience beyond the body, about the illusion of separation, about the overwhelming power of unconditional love. More than informing, I wanted to inspire. It wasn't about convincing anyone, but rather about touching hearts, awakening dormant memories, rekindling the divine spark that exists in every human being. And so, the mission given to me by Miguel began to take shape, still without a defined itinerary, still with fears and uncertainties, but with faith. A faith that did not come from doctrines, but from the direct experience of having been on the other side and coming back. I never spoke directly about everything I experienced, nor did I feel the need to detail each step of this journey. I preferred to let the wisdom I had accumulated flow naturally through my words, like a river that doesn't need to explain its origin to touch those who listen to it. One of the greatest lessons I learned was to respect each person's pace and path. Not everyone was ready to hear the message I brought. Insisting on forcing it would only generate resistance and drive away those who might, one day, awaken on their own. Over time, I understood that I was just supposed to be a beacon, a point of light on the horizon, allowing those who were ready to find their way to me without rushing, without pressure. On silent nights, when the world seemed to fall asleep, I would sit in meditation. I would calm my mind and seek to reconnect with that pure energy that I had felt on the other side. In those hours of deep stillness, I would feel the presence of beings of light around me, an invisible companion that would always remind me that I was never truly alone in the mission that had been entrusted to me. Archangel Michael's words echoed incessantly in my mind. The future of humanity is at a turning point, and I could see it clearly, in the news, in the conflicts and crises that seemed to multiply every day. It was a bleak picture, yes, but I could also glimpse here and there sparks of hope, human movements coming together to support one another, rising waves of awareness, people seeking more meaning and purpose beyond the material. I knew the road ahead would be tough. The possibility of this dark future was real, but I was also certain that every act of love, every gesture of compassion, every small awakening could serve as a spark capable of igniting the flame of change. Doing my part, raising human consciousness, one heart at a time, was what gave me meaning. Living the truth I knew, being a living example of the unconditional love I had experienced, helping others see their own divine nature. As I embraced this mission, a deep peace began to settle within me. No matter what the future brought, I was on the right path, and with each step I took, I felt more aligned with the greater purpose that had brought me back. Even though the future remained uncertain, I was ready to face it, armed with the knowledge and love I had brought from the other side. I couldn't help but think of the visions Miguel had shown me. The dark future he had predicted seemed to be unfolding before our eyes in many ways. Environmental crises, social crises, spiritual crises. Every day these headlines confronted us. But at the same time, I saw signs of the other possibility, that future of light and spiritual evolution. I saw it in the sparkle in the eyes of the young people who attended my seminars, hungry for a deeper truth. I saw it in the global movements for justice, compassion, and sustainability. I saw it in the growing acceptance of practices like meditation and mindfulness, even in corporate environments that had previously been deeply skeptical. Over the years, my work has evolved. What began as simple lectures and workshops has grown into something bigger, a global movement. Together with Eleanor and a dedicated team, we founded the Center for Expanded Consciousness, a space where people of all backgrounds could come to learn, grow, and awaken to their true selves. Through the center, we are able to reach millions around the world, offering online programs, in-person retreats, and even a meditation app that helps people connect with their spiritual essence in the midst of the hustle and bustle of everyday life. Seeing the impact of this work has been an immense source of gratitude. I receive letters and emails every day from people whose lives have been transformed, those who have found hope in the midst of despair, who have discovered purpose where there was once emptiness. Still, I know the work is far from over. The future that Miguel showed me is not yet decided. We are, as he said, at a turning point. The choices we make as individuals and as a species will define the course of our evolution. Sometimes as I look at the state of the world, I feel overwhelmed by the magnitude of the challenge. But then I remember the words of the Archangel. Do not underestimate the power of a single soul dedicated to the light. Every act of love, every compassionate choice, every moment of spiritual awakening creates ripples that spread throughout the universe. And it is this faith, this silent certainty, that keeps me steady and walking. And even if we can't always immediately see the fruits of our actions, I deeply trust that every gesture, no matter how small, is woven into the immense tapestry of cosmic evolution. Every step, every choice, every act of love builds something greater, something that transcends time and space. Now, as I approach the end of this earthly journey, a serene peace settles within me. I know that I did my best to fulfill the mission entrusted to me. I also know that my work does not end here. It will continue, lived and expanded by all those whose lives have been touched by this message, by this light that we seek to share. I don't know what awaits me on the other side, when the time comes to leave again. But contrary to the fear that many feel, I feel a deep calm. The experience I have lived has taught me that death is not an end, but rather a transition. A return to our true home, our spiritual home, where the essence of who we truly are resides. For you who read these words, I want to leave you with one last thought, an invitation to your heart. You are much more than you imagine. You are an eternal soul, a unique and precious expression of the divine. No matter what storms we face, nor how dense the darkness may seem, there is a light within you that can never be extinguished. Never forget this. You are not alone. We are all intertwined, living parts of a great and infinite cosmic tapestry, woven with threads of love and compassion. And with every choice we make, with every genuine act of love, we have the power not only to transform our own lives, but also the destiny of all humanity. The future is in our hands. May we walk together, always choosing the path of love and compassion for the good of all beings, today and forever.